It was a bright Monday morning in the small town of Franklin, nestled deep in the heartland of America. The courthouse was alive with routine, lawyers shuffling papers, jurors settling into their benches, and a judge preparing to preside over yet another day of testimony. The case in session wasn't particularly sensational, at least not on the surface. A local gang member was being tried for a string of burglaries, though whispers floated that the charges barely scratched the surface of what he was really involved in. Still, for the men and women inside that grand courtroom, it was business as usual. Judge Helen Reynolds, a firm but fair woman with nearly 20 years on the bench, adjusted her glasses and glanced at the clerk to confirm the next witness was ready. Just as the bailiff signaled to begin, the sound of a distant bark echoed from the hallway, sharp, insistent, and growing louder by the second. Heads turned. Before anyone could react, the heavy double doors of the courtroom burst open with a bang. Gasps rang out as a large German shepherd barreled through, paws thudding loudly against the polished floor. The dog's focus was laser-sharp. His ears forward, his mouth parted in an urgent pant. He didn't hesitate or veer from his path. He charged straight through the aisle, ignoring the startled cries of onlookers, toward the raised platform where the judge sat. "Is that ... a police dog?" someone whispered. "Someone grab it," yelled another. But no one moved quickly. Enough. The dog lunged forward and skidded to a halt at the base of the judge's bench. His barking grew frenzied. He scratched at the wooden panel beneath the platform, tail rigid, fur bristling along his back. His body was tense, alert, almost vibrating with intensity. He wasn't confused, and he certainly wasn't lost. This dog was trying to tell them something. Judge Reynolds shot to her feet, startled. What on earth? She began, but her voice was drowned out by the echoing barks. Her gavel slammed down once, twice, order in the court. But there was no order now, just confusion and a rapidly growing sense of unease. From the back of the courtroom, a uniformed officer rushed in, breathless. "Rex, no!" he shouted. "Heel!" The dog didn't budge. The officer, Javier Torres, moved through the stunned crowd and crouched beside the animal. He clipped a leash to the collar, but didn't pull. His eyes studied the dog, and the bench, and back to the dog. "He's never done this," Torres said aloud, his voice filled with confusion and something else, fear. The judge looked down, trying to regain control. "Is this your dog, officer?" "Yes, ma'am. K-9 unit, trained in narcotics and explosive detection." The room fell deathly quiet. The implications of those last three words hit everyone at once. Explosives? The judge repeated, her hand tightening on the rail. Torres nodded slowly. "If he's signaling like this, it's serious. Clear the courtroom." Judge Reynolds ordered. Now. Panic didn't erupt, not immediately. People were too stunned. But as the bailiffs began guiding everyone toward the exits, murmurs turned to whispers, whispers into hurried questions, and finally the buzzing murmur of growing fear. Something wasn't right. Something dangerous was in that room. As the courtroom emptied, Rex remained focused on the spot beneath the judge's bench. He wasn't barking anymore, just whining low, his nose pressed to the wooden floorboards, tail stiff. Officer Torres carefully crouched and ran his hand along the lower panel. That's when he felt it, a faint seam, a square outline carved into the wood. "Judge, step back," Torres said firmly. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Torres. I've got K-9 alert on a possible device beneath the bench in courtroom 3. Request bomb squad immediately. Evacuate the floor." A pause. Then static, followed by a calm voice. "Copy that. Bomb squad en route." Judge Reynolds, though clearly shaken, nodded. She backed away, stepping off the bench and joining the remaining court staff outside the room. Within minutes, the entire courthouse was placed under lockdown. Streets around the building were closed, and news began spreading that something serious was unfolding inside. Back in the courtroom, Torres stayed kneeling beside Rex. The dog had saved his life once before, sniffing out a roadside IED while they were deployed overseas. After military service, both man and dog had joined the local police force. Torres had never seen Rex this agitated, not even in combat zones. The minutes crawled. Then, a team of 3 technicians in heavy bomb gear entered the courtroom. One of them, a tall woman named Agent Valerie Knox, motioned Torres back. "We'll take it from here," she said. "Bring the dog out, just in case." Torres hesitated. He found it. "He deserves to know." Knox nodded, understanding. We'll keep you posted." Rex was led gently from the room, his head turning once more toward the bench, as if to say, "Be careful." Behind closed doors, the bomb squad set to work. Using small tools, they pried open the hidden panel Torres had discovered. Inside, wrapped tightly in black cloth, was a duffel bag. One of the agents leaned in, flashlight in hand, and froze. "There's a timer," she said, voice tight. "Wires. Looks homemade but dangerous." They worked quickly and efficiently, disabling the timer and separating the circuit. Within 15 minutes, the danger was neutralized. Outside, Officer Torres waited anxiously with Rex at his side. The moment the team stepped out and gave the all clear, he let out a long breath. But the relief was short-lived. What they found wasn't just a bomb. It was a message. And Rex had been the only one listening. The moment the bomb squad confirmed the device had been safely defused, the courthouse was flooded with federal agents. Yellow tape cordoned off the courtroom, and a wave of silence settled over everyone who had been inside. Officers stood watch. In the halls, civilians were escorted outside to waiting buses, and the building was temporarily shut down. Inside, investigators snapped photos and collected fragments from the disarmed bomb. There would be no ordinary afternoon hearings today. The judge, attorneys, and all court personnel had come face to face with something none of them ever imagined, an attack on the justice system itself. Officer Torres stood just outside the front steps, his hand resting gently on Rex's harness. Reporters had already begun to gather across the barricades, cameras rolling, questions flying, but he ignored them. His eyes were fixed on the doors, still processing what had happened. Rex sat obediently, gaze steady, ears perked. He wasn't panting anymore. The mission was over. For him, it had simply been a job well done. But for Torres, it was something else entirely. He crouched beside his partner, voice low. "You smelled it before anyone could see a thing," he said. "Saved all of them, bud." Flashbacks flickered through his mind. Desert roads in Afghanistan, the low thrum of silence before an explosion. Rex alerting him to a buried charge just minutes before it would have taken out their patrol. That's when he knew this dog was special. After discharge, they'd gone through months of retraining to adapt Rex for civilian law enforcement. He'd never let anyone down, not once. But today was different. Chief Investigator Allen Brooks approached from behind, face grim. "Torres," he said, "we need to debrief." Torres nodded, patting Rex once. "Lead the way." Inside a secure conference room, maps of the courthouse layout were spread across the table. Digital screens flickered with security footage, time-stamped from earlier that morning. "We pulled the feed from the courthouse's internal cameras," Brooks said. At 5:13 a.m., a man dressed as a maintenance worker entered through the East Wing. No ID check, no questions asked. He had a forged badge and a toolkit. He spent 22 minutes beneath the bench. We believe that's when he planted the device. Torres leaned forward. Where'd he go after? Out the same way he came in, Brooks replied. He was calm. Walked right past two deputies. Facial recognition gave us a partial hit, Raymond Deeks. Ex-military, dishonorably discharged. Known for bomb-making expertise. Hasn't been seen in years. A murmur passed through the room. Deeks was no ordinary criminal. He had a history of working with anti-government groups and had ties to multiple unsolved explosive incidents across the country. If he was back, this wasn't a one-time strike. We have reason to believe, Brooks continued, this courthouse was chosen because of the case on Friday. You're aware of that one? Torres nodded slowly. Mob trial. Federal witness. Expected to testify. Exactly, said Brooks. A targeted threat disguised as random chaos. Torres ran a hand through his hair. If Rex hadn't, we'd be looking at a courtroom full of casualties. Correct, Brooks sighed. Your dog didn't just prevent a bombing, he saved lives. And now, we have to figure out who gave the order. Outside the courthouse, Judge Reynolds was quietly ushered into a black SUV, flanked by agents. She'd refused to leave earlier, insisting she finish the evacuation herself. Now, safely removed from the scene, her thoughts churned. It was personal now. Someone had placed a bomb inches from where she presided over the law. She'd spent her life upholding justice. Someone had tried to kill her for it. From her phone, she reviewed a list of names tied to Friday's trial. One in particular stood out: Carlo Minetti, mid-level enforcer for the Santoro crime family. Rumors suggested he'd flipped. If so, someone had a reason to make sure the trial never happened. Back at the police station, Rex was receiving quiet admiration from every officer he passed. Detectives brought him water and treats. Someone even draped an American flag bandana around his neck. Torres, meanwhile, sat with a grim look on his face. Brooks returned with new intel. The bomb's trigger mechanism was set to remote detonation, he said, which means Deeks could have been nearby, ready to set it off. Why didn't he? Torres asked. No idea, Brooks replied. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he saw something. Maybe the timing was off. Or maybe your dog got there too fast. Torres looked down at Rex, who was chewing calmly on a rubber ball. Fast enough to stop a massacre. The next morning, national headlines exploded with the story. K9 hero prevents courthouse bombing. Police dog saves dozens in near tragedy. Silent sniffer uncovers hidden bomb beneath judge's bench. The mayor held a press conference. The governor issued a statement. And the Department of Homeland Security officially joined the investigation. What had started as a routine burglary trial had become the center of a nationwide manhunt for a bomb maker with military expertise and criminal ties. Meanwhile, Rex was unaware of the fame. He didn't care for cameras or praise. All he knew was that when he smelled danger, he responded. And his partner trusted him without question. Back at Torres's home that night, things were unusually quiet. He knelt beside Rex's bed and looked at him for a long time. "You've changed everything today," he whispered. Rex licked his hand once, curled into a ball, and went to sleep. But sleep didn't come easily for Torres. He stared at the ceiling, the weight of the day sinking in. Somewhere out there, Raymond Deeks was still at large. And Torres knew the man wouldn't stop with one attempt. The courtroom had only been the beginning. Now it was personal. And the only reason they were alive, to tell the tale, was Rex. Morning arrived with a restless silence at Franklin Police Headquarters. What should have been a day of relief was thick with tension. The courthouse bomb discovery had left everyone shaken, especially because the man responsible was still out there. A dozen new leads had come in overnight, but none concrete enough to put a name and location in the same place. Everyone had a theory, but one truth loomed above them all. Whoever planted that device wasn't finished. Officer Torres walked into the conference room where the FBI had set up base. Rex trailed close behind, his steps quiet yet firm. The room was buzzing with agents tapping on laptops, circling maps, and making calls. Photographs of suspects, blueprints of the courthouse, and bomb schematics covered every wall. Special Agent Valerie Knox motioned to Torres. "We found something." He stepped over, eyes narrowing at the image she held up. Surveillance footage from a gas station, 2 blocks from the courthouse, 20 minutes after the bomb was disarmed. "Look here." She tapped the screen, where a blurry figure in a black hoodie leaned over a gas pump, back turned to the camera. "Could be anyone," Torres said. "Wait." Knox zoomed in on the man's left forearm, partially exposed, just above the glove. A tattoo. It was faint, but visible enough. "We believe it's a match for Raymond Deeks." Torres leaned closer. "How recent?" "Timestamp matches the courthouse lockdown. He was still in town, which means he saw the entire response," Torres said. "He could have detonated it from there." "Exactly, but he didn't. Either he hesitated, or he was watching." A chill ran up Torres's spine. "Watching what?" Knox didn't answer. She turned to the whiteboard where agents had written a single phrase in bold red marker. Why didn't he pull the trigger? Everyone in the room had a different answer. Maybe he lost signal. Maybe something startled him. Maybe Rex's unexpected appearance threw off his plan. But Torres suspected something else, something darker. Maybe the bomb wasn't meant to explode that day at all. "I think we're looking at this wrong," Torres said, drawing their attention. "What if the bomb wasn't just meant to kill, but to send a message?" Murmurs filled the room. Knox raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "Deeks has a history of making statements. He's written manifestos, uploaded videos. He's not subtle. The fact that he chose a courtroom during an ordinary trial suggests one thing he wanted us to notice." Agent Knox crossed her arms. "You think this was step 1? "I think he wanted to remind us he's still here," Torres said, and Rex ruined his grand reveal. Across town, Judge Reynolds had relocated to a safe house, under U.S. Marshal protection. Though physically unharmed, she was not the same woman who'd pounded a gavel in courtroom 3 the morning before. Her hands trembled, her voice caught when she spoke, but her resolve had sharpened. In a secure briefing with federal officials, she spoke with fire in her eyes. "I won't let them scare me off the bench," she said. "They came for the court. That means they came for justice. That's a line we cannot let them cross." Federal agents took her words seriously. The courthouse was now surrounded by steel barricades and 24/7 armed patrols. Dogs swept the building twice daily. Court resumed virtually for most cases. But the trial at the center of it all, the mob case involving Carlo Minetti, had been postponed. "Too risky," officials said. "Not enough security." Judge Reynolds disagreed. "If we postpone justice every time we're threatened," she told them, "we invite more threats." Meanwhile, Rex underwent a second evaluation with the K-9 behavioral team. His reaction had sparked national praise, but also curiosity. How did he know? What exactly had he detected? Was it chemical? Thermal? Behavioral? Dr. Lena Park, a leading canine behaviorist flown in from D.C., examined him for nearly an hour. She checked his reactions, his recall, his scent detection. When finished, she looked at Torres with admiration. "Your dog didn't just detect explosive residue. He sensed a change in environment. That bench panel wasn't original. Someone added it recently. That plus trace sense from the explosive compound triggered his alert. So it wasn't one thing, Torres said. No, Dr. Park replied. It was instinct built on experience. Later that evening, Torres sat in the quiet of his living room, watching the fire crackle as Rex lay at his feet. The day's events swirled through his mind. The footage, the unexploded device, the theories. And still, one question wouldn't leave him. Why didn't Deeks detonate? He stood and grabbed a file folder marked Minetti Trial Witness List. Though redacted, a few names had been cleared for internal review. He flipped through them, eyes scanning, looking for any pattern. Then he stopped on one, Lucas Crowley, a tech contractor who had once worked inside the courthouse. He remembered something else from Knox's report. Deeks had used inside access to bypass scanners. Crowley had clearance. Torres made a note. Maybe this wasn't about explosives. Maybe it was about infiltration. He picked up the phone and called Knox. I need you to run a full background on a courthouse tech named Lucas Crowley. Something feels off. Knox didn't hesitate. Already flagged him, she said. We think he might have helped plant the panel. Any connection to Deeks? Not yet, but give it time. As they hung up, Torres turned to Rex, who had lifted his head. The dog seemed to sense something in the air. A mood, a shift. Torres smiled faintly. We're not done yet, are we? Rex thumped his tail once. Far across the state, in a darkened motel room outside Chicago, Raymond Deeks sat hunched over a laptop. On the screen were news clips of the courthouse evacuation, articles about Rex, and one photo, a blurry image of Torres and his dog being cheered by a crowd. Deeks stared at it, expression cold. Then he clicked a folder labeled Phase 2. Inside were blueprints, not of the courthouse, but of the local police station. The following morning, Franklin Police Station came alive with purpose, but under the surface, the atmosphere was raw. Officers patrolled with sharper focus. The dispatch room buzzed constantly, and no one was moving without a second layer of security. After the courthouse incident, everything felt exposed. Everyone knew they were no longer just enforcers of law, they were potential targets. And if Raymond Deeks had indeed planted the bomb as a warning, then the next move wouldn't be subtle. Officer Torres arrived early, greeted by nods and coffee handed off like ammunition. Rex, walking calmly at his side, seemed to glide through the tension. Every officer had a kind word for the dog now, but praise didn't mean safety. Torres knew that too well. In the center operations room, Agent Knox and her federal team had set up shop. Maps were pinned across the walls, layouts of the courthouse, the police department, and nearby municipal buildings. 3 words glared in red. Above all else, Phase 2 imminent. We got a ping last night, Knox said as Torres entered. She motioned to a grainy photo on the screen. Highway camera caught a car matching Deeks's known vehicle heading west toward Franklin less than an hour after the courthouse was cleared. Torres narrowed his eyes. He didn't run. No, Knox said. He circled back. Another agent stepped forward. We also traced a partial email draft recovered from his burner laptop left in the Chicago motel. No outgoing messages, but metadata showed he uploaded a series of blueprints. Torres studied the printouts. One was clearly the Franklin courthouse. Another was eerily familiar. That's us, he said, pointing to the diagram. Our department, Knox nodded. You're the next target. A chill settled over the room. Every hallway, office, evidence room, holding cell, it was all right there. And if Deeks had help, the risk wasn't just theoretical. He could be inside already, Torres said quietly. They began checking badge logs, staff backgrounds, and security footage from the past 2 weeks. Then something clicked. Lucas Crowley, Knox said, pulling up a personnel file. IT contractor, Worked on the security wiring 6 weeks ago. No red flags on initial check. But now? Torres looked over the file. Lucas disappeared 2 days ago. Missed a courthouse walkthrough. Exactly, she said. And there's more. He served 2 years in the army. Same base as Deeks. Overlapping by 14 months. That wasn't coincidence. That was recruitment. We need to sweep the station, Torres said. Now. Knox was already ahead of him. Teams moved in section by section. They worked methodically, checking vents, pedals, electrical closets, even ceiling tiles. Rex was brought in for scent detection, his nose skimming floors and corners, alert as ever. It was in the basement evidence room, normally, locked down tight where Rex stiffened. He stood still for a moment, then began circling one particular wall. Torres followed closely. He's got something, he said. Behind a tall rack of old case files, a loose section of drywall had been tampered with. Barely visible, unless you knew what to look for. Knox ordered everyone back as a bomb tech was brought in. Inside the wall cavity, a pressure device, wired and active. It wasn't a large bomb, but in a confined area like this, with flammable records and electronics, it would have been enough to destroy the entire lower floor and anyone inside it. Rex had found it again, with seconds to spare. The tech disarmed the unit, sweat visible on his brow. Same signature as the courthouse bomb, he confirmed. It's Deeks. Torres looked around the room, fists clenched. He's hunting. The institution's first the courtroom, now the cops. Not just that, Knox said, stepping beside him. He's testing us. Seeing how fast we respond, and who responds. Torres's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. It was him, Torres, standing outside his home with Rex. The timestamp showed it had been taken earlier that morning. His blood went cold. Knox looked over his shoulder. He's watching you. They rushed to Torres's house, escorted by 2 squad cars. The perimeter was clear, but Torres swept the property himself, with Rex leading. Nothing suspicious inside. But someone had been close enough to take the photo undetected. A threat. A game. A signature. They installed cameras, motion sensors, and patrols. But Torres knew that wouldn't stop Deeks. He wasn't afraid of being seen. He wanted to be seen. Later that night, Knox gathered everyone again. We believe Deeks isn't working alone. He recruits people with military ties, people who know infrastructure, tech, and security. Lucas Crowley was likely his inside. Man at the courthouse and the police station. But Crowley hasn't surfaced. Either he's in hiding, or he's already dead. The weight of the hunt was growing heavier. They weren't chasing a criminal anymore. They were pursuing a strategist. Someone with a cause, a grudge, and no fear of death. We're going to bait him, Knox finally said. Torres looked. How? Knox placed a new file on the table. We leaked that the Minetti trial is rescheduled 2 days from now. Same judge. Same room. Full attendance. We'll make it look like business as usual. And in reality? Torres asked. We'll have 24 agents inside, snipers on rooftops, K9 units, and eyes everywhere. He won't be able to resist. If he thinks the system didn't flinch, he'll try again. It was risky, dangerous, maybe even foolish. But Torres understood the logic. Deeks wasn't just targeting people. He was targeting trust in the law, in the system, in those who protect it. And the only way to stop him was to make him move. As the meeting ended, Torres looked down at Rex. The dog's eyes met his without hesitation. You ready? Torres asked. Rex simply stood, because whatever came next, they'd face it together. 2 days later, the courthouse stood tall beneath an overcast sky, its steps buzzing with activity. Reporters lined the sidewalks. Civilians whispered behind barricades. From the outside, it looked like a high-stakes trial had resumed as planned. The postponed mob case with federal implications. But inside, this wasn't just a courtroom. It was a trap. Every hallway was wired with hidden cameras. Snipers occupied nearby rooftops. Unmarked vehicles circled the perimeter. Inside the courtroom, most spectators were undercover agents. The judge, bailiff, and even the court reporter were briefed and armed beneath their robes and desks. Everything was ready, but still, no sign of Deeks. Officer Torres adjusted his earpiece from a secure post 2 doors away. Flanked by Rex and Agent Knox, they watched the trial unfold on a monitor, eyes never leaving the judge's bench. The same bench where Rex had discovered the original bomb. Now reinforced, it served as bait and warning both. "Everyone stays sharp," Knox murmured. "He's not going to attack in plain view. He's going to test the edges." Torres nodded, then turned to Rex. The dog sat silently, body taut, nose slightly lifted as he sniffed the air. His ears perked suddenly. Torres stiffened. "He's picking up something." Knox turned. "Where?" Rex stood and faced the western corridor that led behind the judge's chambers. His steps were measured, focused. They followed without hesitation. Through the security hall, past locked doors, Torres moved with precision. Rex stopped near a janitor's closet and barked, once, sharply. Torres raised a hand to signal the team. "He's alerting on this door." Knox nodded to the nearby bomb tech, who stepped forward with a scanner. Moments later, he stepped back, face pale. Magnetic field detected through the wall. Something's planted behind it. A tactical team moved in. The door was breached. Inside the small closet, tucked behind boxes and janitorial supplies, was a steel panel, loosely bolted. Inside, they found a device smaller than before and far more sophisticated. A remote detonator was already active. Torres's breath caught. "He's already watching." Knox issued a command into her mic. "Lock down the floor. All units prepare for mobile breach. Deeks is in play." From the command van, a tech officer traced a signal burst from the detonator. It had pinged a network less than 5 minutes. Earlier, the source, a public parking garage 1 block away. "Move now," Knox snapped. Torres, Rex, and a federal team sprinted through the alley behind the courthouse toward the garage. The city blared around them, cars honking, voices echoing off brick walls, but Torres heard none of it. Only his pulse and Rex's quiet breath beside him. They reached the first level. Nothing. Second. Empty. On the third level, Rex froze. Then bolted. "East side," Torres yelled, following. A figure in a gray hoodie rounded a corner at full speed. As the team gave chase, the man dropped a small transmitter onto the pavement. Seconds later, smoke erupted from vents along the structure's wall, obscuring vision. "Flash suppression," one agent shouted. Torres didn't hesitate. "Let Rex go." The leash dropped. Rex darted into the smoke, ears low, legs pounding. Gun drawn, Torres moved with the others, through the thick haze, coughing, trying to follow the echo of barking through concrete. Suddenly, a sharp yelp rang out. "Rex!" Torres called. They pushed forward. Through the smoke, they saw him, Rex standing firm, body blocking the fleeing suspect. Blood trickled from a shallow cut above his shoulder, but he didn't flinch. He growled low, every muscle braced. The man turned, raising a weapon. But Torres was faster. "Drop it," he barked, weapon trained. The man hesitated. Eyes met Torres's. Cold, calm, calculating. "Deeks," Torres growled. Then came the click, not of a gun, but of a button. From his pocket, Deeks had activated a second signal. Back at the courthouse, alarms rang out. "He's triggered a backup device," yelled a tech agent. Knox shouted over the comms. "Find it now. Full evacuation." Inside the courtroom, agents ushered everyone out as chaos erupted. Torres grabbed Deeks and slammed him to the ground. "What did you arm?" he shouted. Deeks smiled, blood on his lips. Too late. Back at the courthouse, Rex's earlier alert was reanalyzed. Torres had assumed the closet was the only target. But what they didn't check was the electrical panel above the janitor's shelf, cleverly disguised behind a false wall. When agents pried it open, they found it. A secondary device, identical in design, linked wirelessly to the decoy in the garage. It was set to detonate once the first was disarmed or accessed, but they weren't out of time yet. The bomb techs worked quickly. Wires cut, circuit disengaged. Timer frozen with 6 seconds left. Knox exhaled. On the roof of the parking garage, Torres cuffed Deeks as backup arrived. "You almost blew up a courtroom full of people," he spat. Deeks looked at him with dead calm. "I didn't fail. I proved the system is vulnerable. I made your courthouse a fortress. You'll never hold a trial without fear again." Torres shoved him into the back of the armored SUV. "Wrong," he said coldly. "We held the line." Rex limped up beside him. Torres dropped to his knees, cradling his partner gently. "You okay?" he whispered. Rex gave a weak wag of a tail. His eyes remained steady. A medic arrived to tend to Rex's wound, not deep, but painful. Still, the dog had stood between a weapon and his handler, again. There wasn't a single officer present who didn't recognize the meaning of that. They returned to the courthouse under escort. The crowd outside erupted into applause when they saw Rex alive. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. But Torres held up a hand. "No statements today," he said. "Only thanks." Inside the courtroom, the bomb tech handed Knox the deactivated second device. She held it up, studying it. "This wasn't just engineering," she said. "It was revenge and strategy," Torres added. But strategy lost. As Rex lay resting in the courthouse's private chambers, a soft blanket draped over him. Torres sat beside him in silence. Outside, federal agents took Deeks into custody. The courthouse was cleared, but not quiet, not forgotten. They'd survived 2 attacks. And Rex, once again, had been the first to know. But Torres knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of what Rex had now become. Not just a dog, not just a partner, but a symbol. 3 days after the arrest of Deeks, the courthouse was slowly returning to normal, but it was a tense, cautious kind of normal. The wooden bench beneath which Rex had first alerted remained untouched, preserved as evidence. It had become a silent monument to what could have been a massacre. Visitors still walked by with hushed voices, some laying small tokens on the marble floor, flags, photos of Canine South, even handwritten thank you notes addressed to the dog who saved the court. Rex had been cleared for duty, though a light scar now marked his right shoulder. He wore it like a badge. Detective Torres hadn't left his side since the day of the takedown. The bond between them had deepened to a level beyond language. Rex was no longer just a working partner. He was a legend, a living warning to those who underestimated loyalty or instinct. Still, there was unfinished business. In an underground conference room within the FBI's district headquarters, Torres and Agent Knox sat across from the prosecutor assigned to the Deeks case. Thick folders littered the table, each one marked confidential. Deeks had been interrogated, but his answers were calculated, manipulative. He seemed to know that even from a cell, his influence could stretch beyond steel walls. "He keeps saying it's not over," Knox said, flipping through Deke's recorded statements. Every answer feels like a breadcrumb, as if he wants yous to follow. Torres crossed his arms. He planned those bombs for months, maybe longer. This wasn't a one-man show. I think someone else was watching that courtroom. The prosecutor nodded. The signal strength from the detonators was too weak to be triggered from the garage alone. He had help. Possibly even someone inside? That idea chilled the room. Knox leaned forward. We need to re-interview every staff member on duty. That day, check the guest log again and pull visitor footage for the entire week before the trial. We missed something. Deeks is arrogant, but he's never careless. Torres added, start with anyone who had proximity to the judge's bench. That's how the first device got there. Meanwhile, Rex remained on limited duty at the precinct, where he'd become a kind of mascot. Officers dropped by just to pat his head or bring him treats. Children from the neighborhood stopped by with drawings of him in superhero capes. The media had dubbed him Justice's Nose, a name that, while cheesy, somehow stuck. But Rex wasn't distracted by fame. His instincts remained sharp. Late one night, long after the precinct lights dimmed, Rex began pacing the perimeter of the squad room. Torres, working late, watched him silently. The dog circled the evidence storage room twice, then sat down and stared at the door. Torres stood up slowly. What is it, boy? Rex barked once sharp and low. Torres unlocked the door and stepped in. The room smelled like cardboard and metal. Dozens of sealed boxes lined the shelves. One box, stored on the top left shelf, drew Rex's nose. He whined, standing on his hind legs to reach it. Torres grabbed the box, marked Recovered Items, Deke's case. He sliced the tape, pulled back the lid, and froze. Inside was an old, black flip phone. It was powered off and appeared untouched, but something was off. He slipped on gloves and removed the battery. Hidden beneath, it was a second microchip not factory standard. This wasn't just a burner phone. It was a receiver. Someone had been listening. Torres grabbed his radio. Knox, we've got a bug. Hidden chip inside evidence. Get to the station now. Within 30 minutes, Knox arrived with a federal forensics team. They ran diagnostics on the phone and confirmed Torres' suspicion. It had been activated remotely just 12 hours prior, meaning someone was still trying to tap into court proceedings. Likely someone still loyal to Deeks. This was planted after we booked him, Knox muttered. There's a mole inside. Surveillance footage from the evidence room showed only 3 employees accessing that shelf in the last week. 2 routine inventory officers and 1 clerk with night shift privileges. An employee named Evan Dale. Torres stared at the screen. Pull up his personnel file. The name rang no bells, but the face looked familiar. When the file appeared, it showed a spotless record, 10 years of service, and no prior infractions. But when cross-checked against courthouse surveillance, from the week of the trial, something stood out. Evan Dale had been inside the courtroom. Twice. Once. 2 days before the attempted bombing, delivering a package to the clerk's office. The second time, the day of the attempted attack, seated quietly in the back row. Dale wasn't just a clerk. He was watching. Possibly scouting. Possibly more. Knox's voice sharpened. Where is he now? Torres was already grabbing his vest, address, now. Evan Dale lived in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from downtown. By the time the task force arrived, his apartment was dark. No vehicle in the lot. Torres knocked. No answer. They breached the door. Inside was a scene chillingly familiar: blueprints, signal jammers, old court documents, and surveillance photos. But no Dale. A message had been left on a sticky note, taped to the fridge. 3 words, scrawled in thin, jagged ink. Phase 2 begins. Torres stared at it, heart sinking. Knox exhaled. This wasn't just revenge. It was part of a plan. Deeks was the face. Ale was the operator. And now he was gone. Back at the station, Rex paced again. He didn't need to understand words to know something big had shifted. His instincts told him it wasn't over. Not yet. Torres knelt and rested his hand. On Rex's head, "They're coming back," he said quietly. "But we'll be ready." Outside, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked over the city skyline. The courthouse stood tall against the horizon, still lit by floodlights and scarred by memory. And somewhere in that city, Evan Dale was watching, planning, waiting, but so were they. And Rex, the dog who saw through silence and beneath the surface, would be the first to know again. The city pulsed with unease as news of Evan Dale's disappearance spread quietly among law enforcement. Though the public still hailed Rex and Torres as heroes, behind closed doors, the atmosphere shifted. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. Every agent knew Dale wasn't fleeing. He was circling, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The words "Phase 2 begins" weren't just a threat. They were a promise. Torres barely slept. He stayed late, poring over maps, blueprints, past courtroom cases, and Dale's history. Meanwhile, Rex remained alert, never far from his partner. The dog's behavior changed, subtly restless pacing, sudden growls near doors, ears perked at passing sirens. He sensed something nearing. One morning, Torres received a call from a courthouse custodian named Darnell. He was one of the few who had been in the courtroom the morning Rex had bolted toward the bench. His voice trembled on the phone. "I didn't remember until now. The man in the back row? He was watching the K9 South, not the judge. He left just before the recess and didn't come back. I think it was Dale." Torres and Knox rushed to the courthouse. Security tapes confirmed it. Dale had scoped out exits, a ventilation system, and the judge's path to chambers. On one tape, he was even seen briefly tapping something beneath the defense table. What was he doing? Knox asked. Testing timing. Maybe the signal strength, Torres said, narrowing his eyes. He was watching how quickly the court would react to a signal. Suddenly, another alert came through. A federal clerk, named Susan Hart, had been found unconscious in her car near the East District Courthouse. Her uniform was gone. Her ID badge was missing. It was the same courthouse where high-profile terrorism sentencing was scheduled in less than 24 hours. Knox slammed his hand on the table. Dale's going to try again. This time with more chaos and fewer mistakes. A plan was hatched fast. The courthouse would remain open to avoid panic, but a full sweep would be conducted under the guise of a routine bomb drill. Torres, Rex, and a select team of agents would go in undercover, dressed as courthouse staff and guests. If Dale was anywhere near, Rex would know. The next morning, tension buzzed through the air like static. Sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows of East District as staff filed in. Security was tight, but not visibly panicked. Everyone played their part well. Torres, dressed as a records clerk, walked alongside Rex, who wore no badge or harness. He looked like a support dog, but his gaze was sharp, alert, scanning everything. People passed. Some smiled, some were distracted. But Rex's nose followed a trail only he understood. They reached courtroom 4B, where sentencing would begin in 2 hours. Torres let Rex lead. The dog sniffed along the walls, benches, electrical sockets. Then, near the rear exit, he stopped. His hackles raised, he growled low. Torres nodded to the agents nearby. Check the vent. Now, they unscrewed the grate. Inside, wrapped in black cloth, was a package no bigger than a shoebox. Torres backed away instantly. The bomb squad was called in. They carefully extracted the device and confirmed an active receiver, rigged to detonate via a timer or remote trigger. Rex had done it again, but it wasn't over. Too easy, Torres whispered. Knox agreed. It's a decoy. The real attack would be more dramatic. Dale knew the drill would catch the planted bomb. It was misdirection. Rex's alert meant Dale had been in that room recently, maybe within hours. Then they heard it. A soft chime over the building's intercom system. All security personnel to the basement for drill debrief. That wasn't part of the plan. Torres and Knox exchanged a look. It's him, Torres said. They ran toward the stairwell, Rex sprinting ahead. As they neared the basement, static echoed through their radios. A signal jammer was active exactly like during the Deeks incident. And in the main electrical control room, they found a guard tied up, unconscious. Torres checked the surveillance feeds. Every hallway camera was down, except one the back hallway near the judge's private exit. And on that feed, they saw a man in a custodian uniform, rolling a trash bin toward the judge's elevator. It was Evan Dale. Knox cursed and called in backup, but communication was still fuzzy. Torres didn't wait. He raced upstairs, Rex beside him, lungs burning as they bolted through empty corridors. Somewhere above, the sentencing had just begun. The judge would exit through his private hallway in 15 minutes. Torres shouted. Into his mic, Judge Simmons is the target. Block the West Hall now. They burst into the hallway and froze. Dale stood at the far end, holding what looked like a remote. Beside him, the trash bin. From inside, it came a low mechanical whir. A second bomb. Bigger. Dale saw them and smiled. I told you, he said calmly. Phase 2. Torres stepped forward slowly, gun drawn. It ends now, Dale. You don't get it, Dale replied. This whole system is broken. What I'm doing it resets the board. That judge up there sentenced my brother to death without blinking. This is justice. You already failed once, Torres said, inching closer. You will again. Then Rex moved. He darted forward, fast as lightning. Dale flinched, trying to hit the remote, but Rex lunged, clamping his jaws around Dale's arm, dragging him down. The remote flew across the floor. Torres dove for it, disabling the trigger just as backup arrived. Dale screamed in pain as agents swarmed him, dragging him away. The trash bin bomb was disarmed within minutes. The hallway fell silent. Rex, panting hard, stood over the remote. His eyes locked with Torres's. Another disaster had been stopped, just barely. Knox arrived and let out a long breath. He almost did it. But he didn't, Torres replied, petting Rex. They looked down at the hero dog. Blood stained his muzzle from the bite, but his tail wagged slightly. Even among chaos, Rex had never wavered. He had followed the scent of evil to its end again, and this time, there would be no Phase 3. Days after Evan Dale's arrest, the courthouse returned to normal, at least on the surface. The floors were polished, the cameras repaired, and the buzz of foot traffic resumed. But something had changed. An invisible tension lingered in the air. Hall's people looked twice at strangers, and every misplaced item triggered suspicion. The memory of how close they came to disaster echoed in every corner. Rex became a legend. News outlets across the country aired footage of the heroic K-9, the silent sentinel who had thwarted not one, but 2 deadly attacks. Children sent drawings, veterans mailed medals. A local bakery even named a treat after him, Rex's Justice. Biscuits, yet Torres wasn't celebrating. He was tired, deeply. While the headlines glorified the win, he replayed every moment, the clues they missed, the security lapses, how easily Dale had slipped through. The man had nearly brought a federal building to its knees twice. Sitting in his apartment, Torres looked at Rex, who lay stretched out on the floor, his bandaged paw resting on an old shoe toy. The dog's eyes were half shut, but alert. Always alert. "You did good, buddy," Torres whispered. Rex thumped his tail once. Then the call came. Judge Simmons requested a private debrief with Torres. Not at the station, but in his chambers. No reporters, no brass, the clerk had said. Just you and the judge. Torres wasn't sure what to expect. When he arrived, Simmons stood by the window, gazing out over the city. His black robe hung neatly on a coat stand, and beside him stood an old photograph, his wife, daughter, and himself at his swearing-in. He turned and gestured to the chair. "Sit, Agent Torres, please." Rex sat beside Torres, still, quiet. The judge's expression was softer than usual, tired like Torres, but grateful. "I owe you," Simmons said. "You and your partner." Torres gave a tight nod. "We were just doing our job, sir." Simmons shook his head. "Don't cheapen it. What you did saved my life, and others." I watched the hallway footage again. Rex didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. "That's what he's trained for," Torres replied. "No," the judge said. "That's what he is." He sat down, folding his hands together. "You know, 30 years on the bench teaches you a lot. About people, about motives. But not once in all that time did I ever believe a dog could possess such intuition. That courtroom. He wasn't just reacting. He was predicting." Torres remained quiet. He'd seen the same thing many times, but hearing it from a federal judge felt different. Simmons leaned forward. "I've spoken with the Director of Homeland Security. They want Rex reassigned." Torres's jaw tightened. "Reassigned?" "Yes. Advanced operations, urban detection, foreign deployments, top-tier missions. They believe he's unique. 1 in a million." Torres looked down at Rex. The dog looked up at him. "I know what he is," Torres said. "But he's not a machine. He's not a weapon. He's a partner. If they want him, they'll have to go through me." Simmons smiled faintly. "I thought you'd say that." He slid a document across the desk. It was a commendation letter signed by multiple federal agencies, officially recognizing Rex as a federal service hero. Below that, in bold type, "Permanent assignment to Agent Michael Torres, non-transferable." Torres blinked. Simmons stood. Sometimes the law gets it right. They shook hands. Later that afternoon, a quiet ceremony was held outside the courthouse. No media, just agents, staff, and a few families whose lives had unknowingly been spared. Rex received a medal, a custom-fitted vest with his name embroidered on the side, and more belly rubs than he knew what to do with. Torres knelt beside him, whispered something in his ear. Rex wagged once and licked his cheek. In the crowd, Agent Knox clapped slowly. "Not bad for a mutt," he said with a grin. "Careful," Torres replied. He understands sarcasm. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Torres and Rex walked through a quiet park near their station. The city skyline shimmered in gold. Children played. Sprinklers hissed. Life continued. A little girl approached with a leash in her hand. Behind her, a floppy-eared beagle trotted clumsily, sniffing everything. "Is he the hero dog from the news?" she asked shyly. Torres smiled. "Yeah, that's Rex. Can I pet him?" Rex, as if sensing her gentle heart, leaned forward. The girl giggled and scratched behind his ears. "He's not scary at all." "No," Torres agreed. "He's brave." She waved and skipped away. Torres watched her go, then looked down at Rex. "You changed something, didn't you?" The dog tilted his head. "I mean it. People don't just feel safer. They believe again. In something good. In someone silent who's watching." Rex stood, alert once more, eyes scanning the horizon. Torres knew there would be other missions, other threats. But in that moment, for the first time in years, he felt peace. Not because danger was gone, but because someone was guarding the line. Someone who didn't speak, didn't judge, didn't boast, just acted. Rex bolted forward suddenly, chasing a squirrel through the grass. Torres laughed and jogged after him, shaking his head. Even heroes had to be dogs sometimes. The night settled in, the city exhaled, and under a blanket of stars, one man and one dog walked home, side by side, ready for whatever came next.